Episode 27, Ducks on the Pond. Very informative one I think we have on our hands here. We got Mr. Future Games Shove Day, Parker Hageman, Mr. Hat on Backwards down in Iowa, who just told us before we hopped on that it's actually going to snow down there, where it feels like we've got over, I heard what's his name on the news last night say we've got over 70 inches or whatnot so far this year. So, but what I mean informative is we're going to talk a little future games. We're going to talk about what it's involved, how kind of what to expect, or what goes on down there. We're going to talk about roster, and then we're going to get into some two-way talent. We're going to talk about some arms. We're going to talk about some bats, and then we're going to talk about some extra guys you might want to keep an eye on that might not have the eye-popping names in the class, but some guys that definitely to look forward to for the preseason underclass for the 2025s coming up on the 18th. So let's jump right into it. Future games. All three of us were down there last year. I'll let Rob start. Kind of explain the overall experience, from Wednesday to Sunday and how everything is put together, how it goes about, and kind of what is involved for that week.
Yeah, so at the Future Games, it's held at our complex, Lake Point, down outside of Atlanta. Every PBR state or region brings a team to represent PBR and perform and compete in that event. It's a 4-day event. The first day we do Showcase Day. That's where all the position players will get all their metrics, data, et cetera. And then we go into 3 days of game action, 1 game a day. Of course, we want the players to compete, but at the same time, it's showcase baseball. Guys are just trying to get on the field, play as well as they can, catch some interest and attention. And ultimately, the end goal, obviously, is to get opportunities and make a commitment and get out of high school and off to bigger and better things.
Parker, you went down there last year. You're wearing the Future Games hat the team wore, the Mizuno hat that they get some gear down there, some swag from the players. But explain your experience and what you took in when you were down there.
Well, yeah, last year was my first year seeing the facility, seeing the complex. I think from an aesthetic point of view, it's a great setting. If you're a Minnesota kid, you probably haven't played.
You're a visitor.
Before. Does she have any questions? We got any? So
I don't know. She's wearing her crisp pajamas still.
Those are awesome.
But sorry.
But from if you're a Minnesota Midwestern kid, you probably haven't played in a setting like that before. You got scoreboard that's flashing out your velo and your spin rates. And then you got all the colleges represented, showing up to the games behind the backstop, some with radar guns. You forget how overwhelming that can be at that age. You're 16 years old, and you look, if you're on the mound, now you're looking to the catcher, and you see behind him that he's got a whole army of college recruiters staring you down. So it is a moment, an opportunity to step up and shine.
So we'll hop into this. I think one of the biggest questions that we all get, or what we get the most of, is how is the roster formed, right? It's a team from the upper Midwest. Both Dakotas now are involved. We've had guys in the past from North Dakota like a Gunnar Heichert, who's committed to the University of Minnesota. We've had guys like Marcus Phillips, Evan Apelwick from South Dakota. We've had other guys who have been offered that end up committing before from those. And it used to be Team Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and now it's a 5-state. And I think one of the things you get, like for instance, an arm. Well, he throws 90 miles an hour. Well, there might be 4 guys down in Nebraska throwing 93, or Iowa, or you name it. So how is that roster put together between the 3 of us and Pascal, who's the scouting director in Nebraska? How is it put together? How many guys are on the team? How many POs? Obviously positional wise, everything. Kind of give us a little brief breakdown of what all goes into choosing the team.
Yeah, with our region, it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse, I guess, when it comes to the selection of the future games. The blessing is we have 5 states worth of guys that we can comb through and evaluate, compare and contrast, and ultimately, pound for pound, we always have one of the most talented teams at that event. Kind of the golden rule of the event: players need to be uncommitted, and that becomes the huge draw for all the colleges, which ultimately there'll be over 200 colleges, most of them bringing 2 to 3 coaches from their staff to blanket the event. And so, you have the moving parts. You could really like a player, but he's already got 3 or 4 offers. He's considering making a commitment. So you're kind of always juggling those pieces. But, we've had multiple MVPs at the event, guys that have really shined and opened up some doors for themselves. But yeah, the blessing is we have a really deep, talented pool of guys to try to drill down in on and see who's going to be the best options. The curse is we have a really deep, talented pool of guys that we need to drill down in on and try to figure out what's going to be the best options. The biggest thing for me is I want players that are going to go down there. They're going to compete. They're going to put themselves in a position to perform at a high level, and that they're going to come out of there with a ton of value, a ton of options, and be able to use it to their advantage. Like whether it be a preseason ID event, something nationally like the future games, ultimately we just want to put players in a position to succeed. We want to see them do well for themselves, and that kind of falls into the equation too. Just trying to match everything up.
Play
Rob, is participating in the future game a guaranteed D1 route for you?
That was one of my
players?
questions.
Sorry, Steph.
Yeah, I think recruiting is different for everybody. There'll be guys that commit a day after the future games. There'll be guys a week, a month, maybe 6 months to a year after the event. It all happens at different times. I do think where they're at from a velocity standpoint, where they're at from, their level of success at that event, that's great that you walk into the event and that you're on this team and you've been selected and blah, blah, blah. But if you go 0 for 10 at the plate and boot 4 balls in the field and struggle over 4 days, like realistically, you can't walk out. I mean, I don't think all your hopes and dreams aren't dashed. I mean, it's just one little snippet of them as a player. But if you don't perform exceptionally well, you kind of got to recircle the wagons and look for other opportunities to put yourself out in front of people and hopefully have better days. I think that to some degree, it seems over the last 3 years, that's been a little bit of the mindset of some of the players on the team, that by getting selected, by showing up at Lake Point, having a jersey on their back and just going through the motions, they still feel like they have the keys to the castle and that they're going to get all these various things thrown their way. The fact of the matter is there's follow through involved. Like, that's great that you got selected. That's great that you're a part of the event. But the reality is I'm just going to spitball, in the PBR ecosystem, we probably have close to 30 teams at that event. And 30 times, most rosters are somewhere 18 to 20 guys. That's 600 really, really good players from all over the country that all want the same exact thing. They want scholarship offers. They want to go to the best school possible. So there's a lot of competition, and I'm not quite sure if every guy who has showed up at that event for us has had that mindset and maybe been totally prepared to walk into that type of atmosphere and do what they need to do.
I think it's a little bit of a, to your point, Parker. I think a little bit of it is a myth, right? Like I'll give an example of a guy that I think really enjoyable guy. I touched on his name earlier, Marcus Phillips. He went a few years back. Is he an arm? Is he a bat? He kind of, everything in between. And then he goes down to Iowa Western. He's throwing mid-90s, and he's committed to the University of Tennessee, right? So I don't think it's a pinpoint, hey, you show up to this thing, you're a definite Division I guy. But it helps, to get on a field in front of that type of those coaches, scouts, you name it. It helps, but I don't think it's ever really a guarantee, because everything that Rob touched on is you got to go out and play, right? You still have to show what you're capable of, and it's not just a showcase setting. And you go up against Team Illinois, who is throwing guys 88 to 92 and, all that stuff. And you got to go show that you can hang and kind of do those things. So it's for another day. We could probably talk for a whole another hour on it, but let's jump into the one of the step processes of choosing the team is the 2025 preseason underclass. St. Michael Dome, March 18th. Really looking forward to it. Really exciting. Really exciting day. We'll start with Parker. Parker's got some guys that he's looking forward to seeing. Who do you got?
You want me to rapid fire the three names, or are we going in an order here? Going all at once?
We'll follow you.
Sure. So position player wise, I'm looking forward to seeing Kellen Burke, North Dakota kid. Why not? My not catcher. Saw him at the North Dakota preseason last year. He comes out to the, what is that place called? The West Fargo Field House?
Rusted Center. We'll be there on this weekend.
Amazing venue. He goes out there and, he's got a strong build of a body, right? You see him swing and he can rotate extremely well. He from a defensive standpoint, he's throwing 75 down a second. He's doing a 2-1 pop time, accurate. And then he goes out and runs a 6.9, right? So you can see that he's an athlete. Kind of raw in the sense that maybe he's not getting the club or training experience in the offseason that somebody from, the cities would, or somewhere down in Des Moines. But I think he's somebody that I want to see what he has put together from last year to this year. And, he's the first guy that on the list. My pitcher, maybe two-way, is Jackson Dial. Again, another Dakota kid, South Dakota, Rapid City. Saw him last year at the South Dakota preseason. He jumped up on the mound, and that's what caught my attention is that, he's got a big body. He spins it extremely well, throws pretty hard, has a great hammer of a curveball. He's done well for himself this offseason. I think he's up to 87, 88. He had a good showcase at the Gophers camp. And he can also play third extremely well, and he's got a pretty good bat. So I think he's going to be one that I really want to see on the mound, but I think he's got the potential to be a strong two-way. And last, my diamond in the rough is a Benilde St. Margaret Red Knight. Going into the reigning state champion Red Knights organization. That's DeAndre Mayaka, outfielder. Saw him at Hopkins last year. He's a complete athlete type of guy. Wiry frame, fast kid, 7'1". I think he's going to put a little bit more muscle on that frame, and he's a guy who's not in that top part of the rankings, but I think, as he grows, as he matures, he's going to be a guy you want to keep an eye on.
Very good. Obviously, like we touched on earlier with the future games, touched on somebody from North Dakota, touched on somebody from South Dakota, and then you got a metro area Minnesota guy. So 3 good ones to keep eyes on. Rob, let's go to you. Who are you looking for? Who are you looking at? Or who's somebody that excites you heading into the weekend?
Yeah, the first guy is Hunter Vadir. Obviously, we've seen him numerous times in the past at events. I had a chance to see him again at a University of Iowa showcase earlier this winter. I think he's gotten some of his fanfare on the mound just because he has a lead arm strength and he's been running it up with some really good velocities. But I actually like him more as a position player. Really athletic, great tools, can run, can throw. The bat is solid. I think it continues to develop. I just think he has a lot of upside. Great academic student, has blown up grades. I think you look at the tools. I think you look at the grades. I just think he checks a lot of boxes that are going to be really attractive to college baseball programs. From a pitching standpoint, I want to see where John Henry Cohorst is right now from Cretin-Durham Hall. And this, I mean, you guys typically listen to my pre-event speeches. You've probably heard them enough that it makes you nauseous at times. But, when we talk about you never know who's watching. Like, you never know who's watching. You got to put your best foot forward every day. And where I first identified him was I went to Cretin-Durham Hall against Eastridge. Even though he really wasn't playing varsity, but Coach Kwasnicka had him taking in and out from the outfield. And he's running around right field like a deer, super long and loose and athletic, throwing rockets into the infield. Just a high level of athleticism, was really interesting and intriguing. And I wrote his name down. I'm like, this is a guy we need to keep tabs on. We need to follow up. We need to have him come to an event. Simply from watching him throw from outfield in and out. Like I said, I just happened to be there that day. The stars aligned. But I think his upside is going to be on the mound. Like he throws a lot of strikes. He has above average breaking ball. He has the advantage of being left-handed. I think the velocity, the way the arm works, I just think the velocity is going to continue to jump as he matures and continues to add weight and strength. I'm just a big fan of him. I think he's got a really high ceiling and kind of a diamond in the rough. One guy that I really like is Luke Adams from Stillwater. He might not, we kind of talk about there's some guys that are quote unquote showcase guys. And there's some guys that are players. And obviously, in the big scheme of things, you're looking for both. Like, you want really good players that have high-end tools. You marry those together, and shocking, those guys get options, really good options to go play at various places in college. Luke isn't anemic in a showcase. Like, he has good tools. He probably doesn't have mind-blowing tools, but they're all solid. They're playable. He's good in every aspect. But on the field, he's a freaking Energizer bunny. Like, he is all over the place. He runs the bases. He goes all out all the time. I mean, he's gritty. He's a competitor. He's out there to win. He's a joy to watch. Like, it's really fun to watch him play baseball games.
Yeah, he's obviously a middle infielder too that can, lead by that way. But too, I put the gamer tag on a guy like him. So I would agree with that. I'll jump into mine here. Mine, I go with the two-way talent. I think we have a couple of them, or quite a few in this class, where depending on the set of eyes, could or could not dictate on what someone likes them more as. But both mine multi-sport athletes, Luke Ryerson out of Eastridge, right? In the off season, you're seeing video after video of him kicking 40, 45-yard field goals, like elite kicker, being recruited at a high level for his kicking game, also punting as well. But I like him personally more as a bat when he was younger, but now you're seeing the arm work. You're seeing videos in the off season where he's up to 90, but a good size, mature frame at 6 foot, 180, 185, somewhere in there. It'll be interesting to see what or who likes him, at what spot. Is it on the mound or is it in the box? And I just like everything that he does at the plate, but now you're seeing his capabilities of that athlete, like I mentioned, on the mound as well. My other guy is from up north, Sam Haugen out of Esco. Older brother, talent runs in the family. Older brother, swings left-handed, headed down to Minnesota State. Also jumps on the mound, throws upper 80s, touches low 90s. But again, Sam, multi-sport athlete, football, basketball, baseball. You're seeing highlights again on Twitter of him throwing down dunks and warm-ups. Just different explosiveness, kind of twitchiness to the athlete. Again, another guy that you don't know, or depends on what you're looking for in the class, whether you like him more as a bat or as the arm, but he runs a 6'8", throws upper 80s from the outfield. I'd say if we're going to be articulate with it, I'd say the bat's probably, behind right now. It's a little bit raw in the box, but again, just, let the athleticism take over and see what happens. But hops on the mound, mid-80s, arm, and wiry frame at 6'2", 165. See if it fills out, see where it goes. But I like a lot. There's a lot to like about Sam Haugen from Esco, who it seems to be just turning out player after player up there, and they run a very nice high school program. So, there's that. And my diamond, he's not ranked in our top 25. We saw him younger a few years back over at a preseason in South Dakota. Now we're hearing reports that he's upper 80s, touching low 90s on the mound. We always knew he had a good arm, but Jacob Mongar, hopefully I said the last name right, out of Sioux Falls, does some Great Lakes stuff over with them, but a guy to keep an eye on, runs well, throws well, solid with the bat, another two-way talent, like I said, but now you're hearing some reports of him climbing up on the mound. You want to mention or touch on before we hop?
I got one question for the both of you. Okay, since I'm thinking about this here, was going over the list of the 2025 arms, and it's Shove Day here on the podcast. Do you guys remember, in a Minnesota sense, a class of arms at the sophomore level? How many have been throwing this close to 90 at this point in time? Right? Does it seem like this is an overwhelming group of higher end velo guys than the past?
It's actually a thing. Me and Rob hopped on the phone the other night and talked about it. I mean, I think the last time might have been, he's been doing this longer than I have. Maybe the Max Carlson time, or maybe even before that, where, you have a handful of guys where it probably made life really hard choosing the team, which it seems like that's the trend, or the way it's trending for this team. But I think that 2020 class, it seemed like, had some guys that could throw it. And I think maybe 2019 with the Frisch and Gilbert time, that class when they were sophomores. But I think Rob can touch on that one too. But those are two that jump off the top of my head right away when discussing it.
Yeah, and with the selection of the Future Games team, obviously we're identifying guys, but at the same time, we're also going to hedge our bet. And I kind of coined it the Seth Halverson rule. Seth Halverson came to the preseason underclass as a sophomore. First event he had ever been to. I think he ran like a 7.4, was 82 across the infield, was maybe low 80s at best on the mound. You could see he was a really athletic kid, kind of raw. Had some things to work on, but he was interesting. He's a guy we liked. But if someone would have pinned me down right then and there and said, is Seth Halverson going to go to the Future Games? I'd been like, that's craziness. He's not at that point. You fast forward to June, all of a sudden he's running sub 7. He's going 88, 89 across the infield. He's going 88, 89, 90 on the mound. So with the selection, we'll spread it out. We want to hedge our bet. We want to make sure that we have good eyeballs on guys, that we have a solid track record to see where they're at. Some guys will get invited early. Some guys will get invited in the middle. I would say a majority of the team, the final decisions don't get made until June. knowing that we want to wrap up the roster, that we want to give families enough time to plan for travel and the moving parts of getting down to Atlanta. But it's all a pretty fluid process. You kind of talked about, so I remember that event because we did it at Vadnais Heights. Drew Gilbert at the time, like everyone knew he was a good two-way player, but his kind of carrying tool, everybody thought he was going to be a pitcher only, which just proves that no one has like this magic crystal ball that's going to tell you where guys are going to be at. Now, there's things that tilt you in one direction or the other. But ultimately, Drew Gilbert was going to college to be a pitcher. He just happened to be a high-level competitor and had the ability to play in the outfield. If anyone said I knew Drew Gilbert was going to be a first-round draft pick as a center fielder, they are full of it. They are lying. That's
We've
not
heard that
true.
a couple times now.
But at that event, Drew was like 86 on the mound, and I think, we kick the dead horse. Like, we talk about this velo and what guys are up to. Like, it's just part of the equation. It's, if we just put all the numbers into an Excel spreadsheet, hit filter, and whoever was at top had automatic invites, like, I would have so much time to go golfing and do all kinds of fun things. But it's just a piece of the puzzle. Drew was 86. I remember Ben Peterson from Duluth. He topped out at 82 at that event. Now, he was a gigantic kid, 6'4", 250 pounds. Through high school, he shored up his body pretty good. But he was 82 at the event, but by the time you got to June, he was upper 80s. It cleaned up his body a little bit and was throwing a lot of strikes. So the preseason event coming up, like, it can be a great launching pad. It can be a great opportunity for guys to kind of show where they're at. But ultimately, it's not the end-all, be-all. There's other opportunities coming down the pipe. We're going to continue to see guys. I think that's the one advantage for us is we just don't run showcases. We cover tournaments. We go out and scout games. We really try to touch on as many points as we can to make sure that we absolutely are trying to make what might not be always the most popular decisions, but we are making the most educated decisions we can, because I know the decisions we make, whether it be future games or invites to events or rankings, like, we're fully cognizant of everything that we do is really impactful, but PBR is impactful, and that's why we have the following we do, and that's why we have the type of players that come to our events.
Absolutely. Well, to Mr. Shoveday, to Iowa, who's finally getting snow, to Minnesota, we appreciate you tuning in one more time. Again, future games, 2025 preseason underclass. Look for the 2026 underclass. I think it's another group that is growing with talent, athletes, and arms. So another one to look forward to, and we'll see both those guys on the same day in March. So again, appreciate you tuning in, catching up with us, and we'll talk with you again soon.